Hey everybody, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. Today's episode was a lot of fun. I'm talking to a guy with a PhD in sales. The first time I've ever talked to somebody with a PhD in sales. And he has some great insights on our culture. He has some great insights on what makes up elite salespeople. And he's done the research. He has a freaking PhD. We have a great conversation. It's a lot of fun. Gunter Wessels with LiquidSMARTS. Go grab a cigar, go grab a cocktail, and get ready to enjoy another impactful episode of Sales and Cigars. Cheers. So Gunter, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to jump on and have a conversation.
Well, I again very much appreciate your time, Walter, and love the topic. Love the context as well. A really good smoke is a nice way to recount how we might have been winning or sometimes losing that day.
Yeah, you can play the cigar either way, right? It's sometimes we don't even need a reason. Just have a cigar.
That's right.
So, and we had an interesting conversation um, a few weeks ago that kind of makes me anticipate this and we're gonna have some fun. Um, but like let's start off. Is there a book that you gift a lot, that you reread, or that you really think highly of that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I get to interact with entrepreneurs, business leaders, and a lot of salespeople on a regular basis. One of my favorite books that I give away is actually, it's probably one you may or may not have heard of, but it's the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Ries and Jack Trout. And part of what spoke to me early on when I read that book was it was extremely clear and very well researched with clear examples. And it finally showed me how marketing works and really fueled this idea that there's a fundamental order and a way that things work that we can rely on to, if we learn it really well, we can influence properly and we can win and make more money and then enjoy all the success that comes with that. Their earlier book, actually by Al Ries, called Positioning, is actually a masterwork on how to launch a product, but it's written as a marketing book on positioning. And just one of the earlier greats. And my favorite sales book is by D. Forbes Lay called The Bestseller. That's one that very few people have read, but D. Forbes Lay did the work. I mean, I read all the Zig Ziglar stuff and all of those things. Actually, reread a bunch of that stuff when I had to do for qualitative and quantitative analysis for my dissertation on elite salesperson behavior. So it was really, I get to enjoy the stuff that I enjoyed, and hopefully understand it a little bit better.
That sales book, I'm gonna have to go. That I haven't. It's one that I haven't read. The positioning, the mind, and the 22 immutable laws. But what those help me with is really understand how marketing and sales is sort of like a Venn diagram, right? And that overlap is bigger than what either side really wants to recognize, right? And
Hmm.
if there isn't congruence between those words, that persuasion, clarity about who we're talking to, um, there's trouble. I don't care how good your product is, how good the offering is in general, or how good your salespeople are. And it's one of the mistakes that I see business owners make. And I explain it like this: they hire salespeople and say, "Here's the product, here's the features and benefits. Go," because they believe the salespeople have the skill set to develop the words, to do the persuasion, and do the selling, and they don't. It's really the business owner's responsibility to make sure that we give them Here's how we talk about our product. Here's why these are the problems that it solves. These are the questions that resonate with our customers. And if we leave that up to chance, we're kind of we're kind of screwing up as a business owner.
We're going to hopefully win at our market share because that's what we should be winning at, and that's our basic win rate. But yeah, there's a lack of art, I think, as you're pointing out here. Um, so I mean, I have a PhD in marketing. So let's, if we want to talk about how nerdy you can get with marketing, I'm amongst the very few. Um, and I mean, I got an MBA in marketing, liked it so well, worked, and then went back and got a PhD.
It's a
And it
commitment.
was
It's really a
it,
commitment.
it I don't know what it was. I think really stubbornness more than anything else. But nonetheless, during this process, I learned a lot about where marketing thinks it can outsell sales. And I also lived the tribe of salespeople who said, "We're a sales-led organization. We're going to go take this hill." And there are definitely organizations out there that have a personality or a dominance as being more marketing dominant, brand led, that sort of stuff, versus more sales, deal making, and that sort of thing. But I don't see them swimming equally fast in the same lane in the same market. In some markets, high touch markets, for example, you're going to have a very strong sales team because it's a sophisticated, risk filled buy. It's
Yep.
hard to market all that risk away because the trust that you engender when you make a relationship with someone in a sales interaction, I mean, that's what it's for, is to ameliorate that fear so that the trust can allow them to buy.
You have to reduce the fear, and we have to help them see that the other side of fear is the thing that they've been missing and that they
Hmm.
desire. It's sort of that, escape the fear and believe that you're gonna, get to that promised land. And I think you talk about it in a way it's really it's complicated, but it's really simple. That sometimes it's more marketing. If you got a B2C product that's really got to get out there and you're looking for that shelf space, that market space, you really need to have the marketing dead on. And then you got to have salespeople that don't screw that up, that continue that story. And then, the other way around where the marketing is less than, we're talking about the brand, and the salespeople got to go take the hill. Um, but it's usually someplace in the middle, and and often it goes back and forth. And what I've noticed is that marketing and sales are playing nicer in the sandbox these
Hmm.
days. They're not pointing fingers quite as much. I'd be curious as your thoughts on this, but there's more data now. There's more real data where the the information is there to know what needs to be tweaked in a very short period of time,
That's right.
if we know where to look and what to look for.
Well, I mean, and I come from the B2B medical devices space. I mean, I started out in distribution and then worked my way up into devices, diagnostics, and other spaces. But we were selling into hospitals or reference labs or other places, and these are large consequential decisions. And what it taught me was, well, frankly, the amount of value I can add as a salesperson is bound by the amount of risk that the customer is taking during this purchase. If this is a very low risk purchase for them, having me around as a salesperson is not going to add a lot of value. But if there's a lot of risk for them and their department, their organization, you name it, then having a salesperson around becomes extremely valuable to that client.
If the
And
salesperson understands the value that they're selling and know how to communicate that to the buyer.
that would definitely help. But I mean, what we see is that, many times we have, despite our best efforts, the customer convinces themselves of the product. And this is one of the risks between feature advantage benefit types of selling, because you're like, oh, imagine if you will. And we're telling you all about this sort of stuff where, we find that in professional selling, especially high ticket, consequential B2B stuff, you have to have a pain dominant logic in the way that you go about pursuing the deal. And that, we need to have a compelling reason to act, usually a problem that we need to solve. It's a pain point that is going to cause enough people to move. So that dominance of a pain point and searching for the pain point reminds us as salespeople that, hey, it's not about how amazing and wonderful and great and R&D and wonder me us. It's about that customer's motivation. And for that reason, we're always going to need salespeople so long as people perceive risk and there's a transaction around that. We're going to need someone to be in there to help them through that process. I
because
don't think AI would be able to do it. I mean, maybe, who knows?
down the road maybe, but it's going to have to be much more generative than what it is today. Um, I'm not worried about that, um, and being invasive. It's a good tool for us to help us write better, maybe, and research better, faster.
Yeah.
But if we haven't, like you said, created compelling reasons and created urgency, because if there's no urgency, they're not gonna move. Um, it's the same thing that's been for 30 years. The big shift is that the buyer, in many cases, is farther along the buying process. They have more information. If you walked into a dealership in the 60s to buy a car, they had all the data. Now, like I, at the last car I bought, I called the buddy that owns the dealerships and said, "Hey, I need this car," and described it. He's like, "Give me a day." He called me and it's sitting in the lot. Come pick it up. Um, because it's all there. Back then, they needed us so we didn't have to work as hard. But I think today, we if we're not providing value and we're not providing and talking to the right people and helping them see that solves problems, because it's rarely about money.
That's
And
right.
it's you have to show an ROI, and you have to show how, but they need to know that their life is going to be better in some capacity. They'll have time, they'll have less risk, or they'll save or make money. But it really comes down to changing something for them. They have to believe it, and that takes a minute. And we need
Well,
to.
one of the cool things about being a salesperson is if you can master the number one attitude, and this one is actually research based in terms of its power. You have this attitude, you're going to have the most successful in terms of productivity attitudes in a sales context, and that is being curious. If you're able to affect a positive curiosity and purposefully explore your customer situation, asking them questions, they begin to convince themselves. And really, I mean, the masterful salespeople just ask a series of questions, and the customer begins to connect the dots for themselves. And I can do that even better if I've got a very well informed client.
Yeah,
In fact, that client, by being more, I want one of these in the hands of a salesperson. If there is risk with this, we can definitely add value because of the development of and the maturity of your ask.
it's really I love the fact, because I talk about curiosity as a mindset. I talk about skepticism as a mindset. And bringing a little empathy, because once that person realizes how bad off they might be or how much they need something, you can't use that as a weapon. You got to have a little empathy for their situation. Right. It all starts with being curious. And if you're not really interested in learning about their problem and interested in learning about if you're really going to be a good fit, I mean, I'm looking to disqualify somebody, right? And I go about it. I want to sound nurturing, but at some point, it's like it doesn't seem like this is a fit for you.
Right.
What are you talking about? Like, I need this, and then like, oh, why did I think that? Well, I don't know, but and then who's selling who at that? Um, but it takes some effort, that curiosity to get you there. So I love that part of it. But we talked a little. Mindset is really critical, and I agree that curiosity is a big piece of that. But you have What do you call the three C's? It's a
Yeah,
not a
there's you know, I do, I've been traveling a lot as part of my work, and then I get to survey real America from the ground all over the different place. And a while ago, I was beginning to lose my hope. And I said, there's really three C's that are wrong with America. The three C's in order are Crocs. When people wear Crocs outside, it means that they've given up.
Yep.
The next one is communists. We are definitely a capitalist society, and we believe in surplus value. We do not believe in the value of work as the generator of value. And Kardashians. I think that's probably the almost the self-evident problem with America. But for a while there, we almost caught up with them. I think we actually did for a minute, and then they started up again, and now we're trying to keep up with them again. But I say all these things to joke because it really underlies a much more serious criticism of what we're seeing, in that people have given up on how they look, how they interact, or how they appear in many contexts. And if we understand communication, communication is the overwhelming minority is verbal. It is very much appearance, your movement, your tone, your tonality, your attitude, and those things. So Crocs are not to be worn outside of the garden, or maybe, by kids. I think that's okay. But if you're wearing Crocs, that's a problem. You're not paying attention to things that really matter around you. So the communists, is where people find merit in working instead of solving problems and making things better. One of the fundamental tenets that we have in our capitalist idea is that we can create surplus value by being better at doing things. That means that when we're really good at doing things, we're not doing a lot of things, but we're earning a lot of money. That is how we deploy capitalism, intellectual capital, and all of those things. And in sales, this is especially the case.
Mm.
Some of the most successful salespeople do not look like they're breaking a sweat because they are doing things on pace, and they're very strong on their sense of urgency. But then Kardashians, and this narcissism that has been really nurtured out there, where people feel like every feeling that they have deserves attention. I believe that feelings are important and people should be able to share them. But at the end, that tends to become a low interest rate environment situation. When things are a little bit more serious, your feelings don't become nearly as salient. And that's one of the luxuries I think we have, but it's also a staunch reminder of, are we actually attending and talking about the things that matter? Much of the time, I find that well, we'll talk
I
about Kim and Kanye.
Yeah, there's so much there. We kind of explored this in our sort of our pre-call. It just, I'm sure that pisses off a lot of people, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean, I saw a shirt the other day, and I literally walked up to the guy. I was in an airport, and I'm like, "I love the shirt. Where the hell did you get it?" And it said, "I am easily offended by someone who is easily offended." And I just like it's just like awesome, right? Um, because I mean, feelings are important, but it's not the driver of our behavior. We should be thinking about and not trying to destroy somebody's feelings, and we should be respectful. But for God's sakes, um, just because you have a feeling doesn't mean that or you're offended. Okay, I understand. You have
Well,
the right. In this country, you have the
and
right to be offended. But
to your point, Walter, but I mean, I carry it a little bit farther, especially with professional salespeople, because our job as influencing professionals is to invoke an emotional response in our clients. Usually, a recognition of a pain point or a problem increases fear. Usually, the lack of some sort of thing you're aspiring for will increase your greed or desire or positive affect even. But when you're busy motivating someone to buy, making a difficult decision, we're piling on emotions. But how you feel about yourself is not information for everybody. It's information for you. And learning how to interact with others' feelings is something we're looking for with salespeople because, I mean, a really great salesperson is usually somebody that's got this need for acceptance and this need for consensus, right? They want you to like them and they're likable and they want you to get along with them. And the acceptance and consensus works really well, especially if it's like, look what we've made. I want you to agree with me that you should buy it. That works. Just add opportunity and there they go. The problem with that is that it's a little bit volatile and it's not conscious. I'm not actually in command of what I'm doing. And as a professional salesperson, I need to start beginning to have command or purchase on my emotions, that EQ thing that we talk
Yeah,
about.
I think I think that's important. I think we have to be aware of what we're doing, but I'm looking for somebody to be emotionally involved in the conversation, right? And I don't care if they're excited, and if they're excited, it usually makes me nervous, but it's emotion. Hey, I want to tell you about a project that I started called Sales Velocity. It's a weekly email that comes out early on a Monday before the shit hits the fan. And what is it? It's just sales tips. It's for that business owner, that CEO, that sales leader who's looking for a little tip to kind of inspire them for the week, an idea that they might be able to try to implement. It's very simple. It tells a bunch of stories about me, things I've screwed up along the way, some successes. All you have to do is go down into the show notes and click on the Sales Velocity link, and you can sign up, and they'll pop into your email on Monday morning, just once a week. Thanks. And then I had a conversation with a guy this morning that he was like really upset, and he was angry, and he was explaining to me what he was angry about. It was one of the things that we were talking about, and he goes, "And I don't understand this thing that you're talking about." Okay, so he just kind of like was drilling into this thing. And I'm like, "Do you get angry when you're driving your car and somebody, flips
Touch
flips
on.
you off?" And he's like, "Well, I'm usually the one flipping people off." I'm like, "Really?" It seems like you get angry and really dig in to like a lot of things that might be inconsequential. And so he started to come out of this anger thing once I recognized it, because I'm like, "You're that's fine. I'm not asking you to agree. I'm just telling you what it means."
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like you're picking the fly shit out of the pepper, but that's your right. And he's like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "Worrying about something that it doesn't, you really don't need to worry about. If it's important, then don't do it. If it's not, then do it." Right. But it's just like flipping a guy off on the road. It really doesn't accomplish much.
But
Um,
there's a reward mechanism there, and there's actually quite a bit of dopamine that gets kicked off with that kind of reaction.
but then you start chasing your tail. I mean, yes,
Yep.
physiologically you're being rewarded, but does it get you someplace that's of value? Because I kind of look at stoicism in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, yeah, he's an asshole. That's okay. He's entitled to be an
Mm-hmm.
asshole. I'm an asshole sometimes. That's fine. But it doesn't get me someplace. And it's like control would go back to the emotion. I get to control what I get upset about. You get to control what you get upset about, but you can't tell me how to think. And you can't tell me that if I say that it triggers you and you're okay, but then turn the channel,
Yeah.
right? Go away. But in the sales,
Exercise your God-given freedom.
yeah. But in a sales context, I want that emotion there, and I don't care which way it is. Once they're moving, I can navigate it. And if they're just sitting there like, the pendulum sitting at 6 o'clock, now I feel like I got to poke them somehow to get them to move. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that the Crocs thing. I didn't go there, but the thing for me is like when somebody shows up to a meeting wearing a baseball hat in a Class A office building in a conference room. And I'm sorry, maybe I'm just old fashioned, but it's just it's
Are they a
disrespectful.
billionaire?
No, and I don't care.
Okay. Well, I mean, if they're a billionaire, then they're trying to make a point that says, I'm so rich, I don't care. Otherwise, they're just saying, I don't care, and therefore what I'm going to be doing here is not going to be as worthwhile. And that is the unfortunate vicarious liability you take for wearing a hoodie like Mark Zuckerberg. Make sure your dress is on point on purpose. As an influencing professional, right? And there are these folks out there, they have a very high baseline motivator for utilitarianism. That means, at their maximum, they become coin operated. They only do things for money.
Right.
But they very much see that, they want a return for their time, their talent, their attention, their effort, and everything. And the bigger the return, the better. Hence, let's not just work harder, let's work smarter. One of the things I did when I was pursuing my PhD was to come up with a topic that I could live with for a while. And so I studied elite salespeople and what makes a salesperson a high performer over time. I created a model for it and a measurement scale, and then they let me go. But what I found about elite salespeople is there's no real socioeconomic predictor. There's no real gender, age, no real intelligence coordination. I mean, there is a threshold that I think you have to be able to, balance your checkbook and be relatively smart. But elite salespeople, first thing they do is they work hard because it takes effort to break through on everything. The second thing they do, also Captain Obvious, is they work smart. They're able to qualify better than ordinary salespeople. And this is one of those things we look at sales forces with all the time. The optimism that you're trying to take out of your forecast is also fixable in your qualification thing. You might be pursuing things you shouldn't be pursuing. So qualify better, qualify, qualify, qualify.
Just
The,
qualify ruthlessly.
Exactly. And your productivity goes up. The third attribute that elite salespeople have that other ones don't is that they fill gaps in their portfolio. So many times, you might be selling something that is in the future will be coming alive, but it's not there yet. It hasn't been approved yet. These guys were great at selling another piece of equipment in there that they could roll off and then prepare for the next one. So they would take ownership of this sales activity in their accounts and sell their accounts a lot of different brands of equipment so that they can control the transaction and thereby control the account.
Yeah, they're growing three by three, right? To make sure
Exactly.
they gain share of wallet within the town.
So they're not afraid to color outside the lines and create a solution that may or may not be there, and that leads to the creativity in terms of problem solving. In that elite salespeople also are intolerant of obstacles. Like any salesperson would never be, told no for this and that. But the story I tell in this was a real story about a sales rep that was one of these guys, and he put a deal together with a city for 150 trucks. So he's selling trucks. So it's a fairly decent sized deal. And then it was all in the bag. And then the city called him up and said, all money has to be frozen. There's a new thing. It has to be environmental. So he said, well, we can make them natural gas. And now you're environmental. So boom, now the deal's going to happen again, and it'll happen faster because there's new money. He's running laps around. He gets a call back again, says deal's off. We have no place to fuel this stuff. So he decided he might need to work for a minute. And he called up the gas company and he called up a couple of fuel integrators. And he had the gas company build fueling stations for these trucks and sold 170 trucks. So nobody would have told him he was a bad rep for the guy saying it's canceled because of a priority. We'll get to it later. Nobody would have told him, oh, well, you suck because, well, they don't have a place to fuel it. But he just filled the gap anyway and got the sale done anyway. So that's that kind of pioneering mentality that comes in for obstacle intolerance. I'll cut the tree down. I'll make a new path.
I love the obstacle intolerance, right? That's a great way to like. There's a way to make this work,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to be creative. I look at the entrepreneurial thinking. Um, and I remember I got hired at a company. I was there a couple of months, and there was a deal that I thought that I was going to have to go out of bounds um, within the company structure. And I went to the corner office and said, "Boss, what are the boundaries here?" Right? And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, tell me what the boundaries are, in terms of me doing this and that." And he's like, "Why do you want to know?" I said, "Because I'm always going to go out of bounds.
I just want to know
I
how
want to
far.
be, I want to know I'm the first one in this room telling you I went out of bounds." He's like, "Wouldn't it be easier to not go out of bounds?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but I wouldn't be as effective." So he gave me the parameters like that he needed to understand. And then I went and,
Hmm.
I did the thing, go find the integrators and go find the natural gas. And but to me, it's like, tell me no and it'll get done.
Yeah.
Tell me it can't happen. And like, that happened for me the first time that my high school guidance counselor, freaking useless. I don't know. If you can't teach, I think they make you a guidance counselor. And he's like, and I think I was 25, 26 out of 400 and some kids in my graduating class. And so I'm not super smart. I'm just a dumb sales guy, but I'm not an idiot. And I said, I'm applying to the University of Michigan. And he's like, "Yeah, that's a bad idea." I'm like, "Why is it a bad idea?" And he's like, "You're not going to get in." I'm like, "Why?" "Yeah, blue collar kid, blah, 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 blah." So I applied to one school. Um, I took on my
You're a
acceptance.
Wolverine.
I, and I got in. I wouldn't get in today, but I did back
Most of the
then.
schools I got into wouldn't let me in today either. That's one of the benefits of doing it this way.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I'll round it off this way because the final attribute of elite salespeople is not just being intolerant to obstacles and working hard, working smart, filling gaps. Is that elite salespeople and very much industry growing, industry leaders maintain, monitor, and continuously grow their personal credibility and use it mercilessly inside and outside the organization. They care about their reputation and maintain it. And the only way to lose top talent like that is to undermine them,
mm,
thereby destroying their only asset, their credibility, and they will walk. They will
yeah.
just walk because it is pure destruction to sit there and say, you said this, now you say this. Why which one of these two was a lie? As an elite salesperson, somebody who moves markets, my word is my bond and my reputation matters most. And so elite salespeople are very careful about their reputation. They're easy to spot. They're very
I,
well known for being successful.
I love that. Because you kind of pick um, you pick the things that are intangible isn't the right word, but they're the underlying things that make a salesperson successful. I mean, you got to have the skills and learn how to do certain things, but that takes you to the level of elite, right? You can be good and, you can be above average because, there are 6%, with our research, it's 6% of salespeople are elite.
Hmm.
And there's 14% that are good.
Okay.
Another 20 that's above average. If you're liberal about average, the rest of them, you don't even
Not
want them
performing.
near your team, right? So when we're looking at people, we want that top 25%, right? That you know, it's hard to get us that elite because they're happy. Something bad has to happen. Their reputation had to be sullied, or somebody's asking them to strain their integrity, um, or their comp got changed.
So one of the questions that always pops up around this is, okay, you've got a measurement scale for elite salespeople. Is it a trait or is it a state? Are they born this way, or can you turn them this way? The answer is it is a behavioral state. It is a very sophisticated routine of behaviors learned over time by these people, but enough of them have learned them in various industries that that's kind of how it works. But it is definitely a state. So salespeople and sales managers can take heart. You can be a rainmaker. The problem with it is you're gonna have to work really hard. You're also gonna have to work really smart. You have to fill gaps in your portfolio. You're going to have to overcome obstacles and drag people to the sale sometimes. And you're going to do this in a time when you are actively building your reputation continuously and testing it all the time. It's hard work. And that's why
It is.
it pays the medium bucks.
I mean, I love that. I love that that definition because I really think it hammers the elite concept of what we should be striving for. And I think people can, if they have the desire and the commitment to get there, they can do it. But it is hard work, and
Mm-hmm.
if you want to excel at anything, it's hard work. So there's a couple of things I want to cover. I want to cover how people get a hold of you to talk more about this. But you gotta you're working on a book. Talk
Yeah.
to me about the book.
The book's called Turning Fear into Fuel. And it's really a thoughtful and pretty well disclosing journey through how you can activate what is, at deeper and deeper levels, driving and motivating you, so that you can have a life that is uncomplicated and joyful. Now, it's a business book, but one of the key things to remember is, if you see a salesperson looking at you, is that joy in their eye or is there a little fear there? What are they afraid of? Everybody's afraid of something. And depending on what it is, we can turn it into fuel and make them go faster.
Awesome. When do you see that being out on the street where people could pick it up?
Book will be on the street next year, around the first to second quarter. We're going to be linking on our LinkedIn pages and that sort of stuff. Best place to reach me is on LinkedIn or www.liquidsmarts, plural.com, liquidsmarts.com, or Gunter, Gunter, Wessels, Wessels. There aren't too many of us.
At least on this continent. Um,
No.
I've met a few Gunters in my day. Um, so I I would really encourage people to go check out the website. I love I love those four principles of elite. Um, it, this is we could have this conversation, but definitely go check out the LinkedIn page. We'll have it in the show notes. Go click on it. Dig in, Gunter, if you have any additional questions. Last question for me, Gunter, is the any relationship with cigars, past or present?
Yeah, my father was an ophthalmologist and actually did some work with the State Department when he was living here in Tennessee, and or just moving here to Tennessee. And he got to go to Cuba to teach them how to do eye surgery, and carried him around, and they just loaded him up with Cuban cigars. And so he came back with what was allowed by the State Department as your carry-on limit for all kinds of fresh Cuban cigars, and handed these things out like Father Christmas. And he gave me a beautiful box of Monte Cristos and a beautiful box of Romeo and Julietas. And I mean, I want to say that that was my first, kind of branded experience with the smoke, like a real smoke. And I traded those for a whole bunch of other things. And so now I like a Dominican Arturo Fuente, or Robusto, or something like that. And a good smoke is a great way to sit and tell stories and hear some wisdom.
I love it. I love the great story. How long ago was that? As you bring the cigar
That was still,
eighties,
that would be, yeah, in the 90s.
nineties.
It was in the 90s, yeah.
Okay. I'm curious. You're in Tennessee.
Hmm.
How does Tennessee treat cigar guys, gals?
Well, actually, there's quite a bit of, I mean, especially here in the flyover west. There's a cool streak of Xers around, and there's cigar bars and wine bars and all of that sort of stuff. There's one just down the road that's a cigar club that you can join. Quite a few guys at the shopping mall will set up a humidor, and then you can go and smoke inside there and that sort of stuff. But yeah, and then in Nashville, a lot of guys who made money on some healthcare stock or some crypto stock or something like that, or some Taylor Swift song, are buying tons of, so there is a ton of kind of yuppie friendly and all nichey types of cigar work in the Nashville area.
Hmm. Last time I was in Nashville, I didn't see a lot of cigar shops, but I was pretty much in the
Got
around
to go to
Vanderbilt.
Franklin.
Okay, that's why we didn't spend time in Franklin. All right, I'm always curious as to how different states make it difficult to have a cigar, and sometimes it's the state, sometimes it's the municipality. California is all jacked up for different reasons, but San
Oh
Diego,
man,
in San Diego, there's a bunch of cigar bars, and you can sit out and have a cigar and a cocktail. Um, and you can't smoke on the beach. Like, I mean, I actually had a cop come up to me on the beach. I was watching the waves and seals, and the guy came up and said, you can't smoke there here. And I think I
sorry.
can. I am. He's like, no,
It
you
seems
can't
like
smoke.
I'm capable.
I think what you mean is you don't want me to. Here's a tip: never argue with the cop about smoking cigars on the beach in California.
I do recommend compliance with law enforcement whenever they're nearby.
Yeah, he was
In my experience.
he got a little bit of my humor, but he was not very tolerant. So I was compliant. I got out. Dude, thank you. This was fun. I really appreciate it. Good luck on the book. When that launches, maybe I have you back and we talk a little bit more about the book. Sounds
I'd
good.
love to. I'd love to. Thank you so much for your time.
All
Appreciate
right.
you.